Hey, you're listening to The Road to a Billion. I am your host, Stefan Georgi, and I'm glad to have you with me here today. The Road to a Billion is a call-in radio show style podcast where you can ask myself and my guests questions about copywriting, freelancing, entrepreneurship, mindset, scaling, relationships, money, really anything else. The reason for the name The Road to a Billion is because I will have hit $1 billion in sales by the end of this year, both for copywriting for myself and for clients, and it's the last day of the year. So I guess probably hit it. I honestly, I haven't verified that because I haven't just done a full accounting, but I know stuff this year was actively doing between 20 and 30 million a month, and I was already at over 700 million in sales going into this year. So, yeah, I don't know how it wouldn't hit $1 billion. The other reason for the name is because I want to try and make an impact in the lives of at least 1 billion people over the next 10 years, whether that is mental, emotional, financial, spiritual, physical, whatever it may be. So we'll start taking calls in realistically about 20, 25 minutes from now, maybe 30 minutes. The way that works is you'll put your questions into the Q&A section in Zoom, for those of you who are on the Zoom call live with us right now. And then my friend, usually Ed Reay would do this and help to review and moderate, but I'm not sure if Ed's gonna be joining us or not. So if Ed Reay hops on, then he will help to select questions. If not, I will moderate myself. But before we get into that and get into the questions, I wanna go ahead and introduce my guest today, AJ Roberts. AJ, you have a really incredible bio. And so AJ, for context for people, I asked AJ for a bio and it was like 2 sentences long. Oh, there's Ed Reay. So Ed Reay is here and we'll be moderating. That's great.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was going through the emails with the panelist link, and for whatever reason, there was like 5 of them bunched up in one email. And like I didn't look at the date, and I just clicked on the January 14th one. So anyway, what's up, AJ? Good to see you, buddy.
Glad you're wearing a shirt.
And he's wearing a shirt.
Was it a debate whether I would be today?
Yeah, it was immediately mentioned in the chat whether or not you'd be wearing a shirt.
That's so funny.
Well, people said maybe you're looking for a shirt, and that's why you trying to.
New year, new me, bro. Come on.
Is that because new you mean more shirts?
I don't know. Maybe. No, I'm totally kidding.
New year, new shirts. Well, anyway, Ed, in that case, why don't you go and introduce yourself real quickly, Ed? You came on just as I was doing this intro, and then from there I'm going to introduce AJ, and we'll kind of dive into it.
Beautiful. Hey, I'm Ed Reay, and I help people who got banned or restricted from Facebook get back on Facebook and stay on Facebook. Perfect.
Succinct, man of few words in this case, but very succinct words. And like I said, you put your questions in the Q&A if you've got them, and Ed will help moderate those, and we'll answer questions live as we go. But now I want to introduce my guest, AJ Roberts. So like I was saying a second ago, I asked AJ for like a bio, and he gave me like 2 sentences at first, and he was like, I suck at bios, and then I was like, well, I really need a little more than that. And he was like, okay, and then it was like a crazy scroll. It was his entire life, but which was actually incredible because I knew a little bit about AJ, but I didn't know a ton. So I don't really want to really steal too much thunder here, but I guess I would just say that from being having a world championship in deadlifting at the age of 17 and other like world records as far as professional and competitive weightlifting goes, to having products and offers in the fitness and health space, partnering with a crazy who's list of people like Yannick Silver and Frank Kern and Andy Jenkins, the late Andy Jenkins, Mike Flosame, and most recently working to scale his current business from $10 to $30 million in revenue. And just also an awesome guy. My guest is AJ Roberts. So AJ, thanks for being on with me.
My pleasure, man. Happy to be here now.
Yeah. So AJ, I don't even know where to start. I would love for you to kind of share a little bit of your background story for those who are gonna watch or listen to this and who don't know anything about you, because it's really an incredible sort of origin story and journey. And I love it because as an entrepreneur, there's always such an indirect path to ultimate success. It's like it's so many different sort of starts and false starts and such a windy road. And so I think people will get a lot of value from that. So can you share a little bit about kind of like your background and where you come from and how you ended up kind of where you are today, but kind of walk us through that journey?
Yeah, and I'll try to keep it short, the short version. But basically, I grew up in England, and I always was into not what everybody else was into. So, one of my friends played soccer, and somehow I ended up playing basketball. I had cousins who lived over here in the United States. They came to England. They were basketball players, and I thought, oh, that's a cool sport. found the local team and started playing for them. But I was obsessed with it. So, you know, I would stay up watching. It was during the Chicago Bulls era. So I'd stay up and the games would be broadcast. And we only had 4 channels at the time. So we were lucky to even get that. But it would be at like midnight and I would have to like sneak and watch it and record it. But that started the obsession with like, you know, wanting to be a professional athlete and then watching MTV Cribs. That kind of seeded that, okay, you're a professional athlete, make millions. It's going to be a fantastic life. And I made the England squad and play under 14 basketball squad. And I was playing for them and I got cut from the squad. And people would fly in from all over the world to play for the England team. And Louis Deng, who ended up in the NBA, was my teammate at the time. He ended up actually playing for Chicago Bulls. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like an unrealistic dream, you know, at the time in my mind. And anyway, I got cut from the squad. And it was when I asked the coach, what do I got to work on? His response was, I can't teach you to grow. I was the same height from 11 to 15. I didn't grow an inch. And so, you know, that was basically why I got cut. It was nothing I could control. So being young and brash and, you know, having all the confidence in the world, I said, you know what, I'm going to leave and I'm going to come to America and I'm going to do it that way. I'm going to go to college. I'll get scouted, all that stuff. So at 16, I came over on foreign exchange. Played a year of sports, ended up being a 3-sport athlete and doing really, really well. But it turned out that I was actually recruited to come over. The basketball coach had seen my profile and then found a home for me. And so that kind of transitioned into powerlifting because it was a non-sanctioned sport that I could compete in. And really, once I got into powerlifting, that obsession began again with powerlifting. And at the time, you know, there was no Instagram, there was, you know, Facebook wasn't around. So the only way you could learn about anything was through magazines. And Bigger, Faster, Stronger was a magazine that we got. And our strength coach had stacks of this magazine from all the years. And I just went through and read every single one. So I became absolutely obsessed with powerlifting, competing in powerlifting. And it turned out that I was pretty good at it. So for me, all of a sudden, here's a sport that I can be a professional and make millions of dollars. You know, I'd seen it on ESPN and that was the way it was going to be. Just to shortcut the story, basically fast forward, found out it's a broke sport. And I call these self-funded sports. There's a lot of self-funded sports out there, cornhole, frisbee golf, you know, the ones you see on ESPN once a year. And so I thought I'd be a strength the University of Idaho in the room.
Hey, 1 second. The audio seemed to cut out for a second. Did it cut out for anyone else or was that just me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For some reason, the audio cut out for a second.
All right. Am I back?
Seemed to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
So University of Idaho.
Yeah, it's still cutting out a little bit. It's going a little like, I think it was like every other word. I think it was the mic maybe or something.
Yep.
I know. So you're in the studio, you're in like the professional setup, killing it. And then yet.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, still doing it.
Still come. Can we still?
Give it a second for the technical difficulties. Ed can just kind of strip. Like he's been wanting to do that anyway. So I know. I mean, I guess you say that for your OnlyFans page. So, dude, speaking of OnlyFans, so I'm like looking at Business Insider today.
Whoa, Stefan, what the fuck?
What?
You started OnlyFans, bro?
No. I didn't start OnlyFans. I'm on business. I've got like my Business Insider like daily email like things or whatever, and it was like 17 like freelance or 17 people like weighing on how to make money for your side hustle. And I'm like, I bet they repurposed like my article and this. So I went and it's like different people giving me advice. And there's like a girl on OnlyFans who's making, like Jill makes $250,000 a year on OnlyFans. There's like blurb about her. And then right below her, it's me. And it's like with like my like Stefan Georgi, I made like, whatever amount freelancing. And I was like, that's kind of funny that it's like side hustles. And it was like OnlyFans, Stefan's like freelancing advice. So I was like, hey, it's kind of cool. Thanks,
Yeah.
Business Insider.
Exactly right. But hey, man, I mean, OnlyFans, like, what do you gotta do? Like, post booty pics like a couple times a week, make 100K, 250 grand. Like,
yeah, her thing. She says that she says in the article she doesn't think of herself as like a sex worker. Yeah, she thinks of her as like herself as like an entertainer and like. Well, that sounds like. Basically, she likes to text. She's like, a lot of it is me just texting with lonely people and making them feel better.
yeah.
Like she basically said that for her, she barely ever is like doing anything too risque, but
Yep.
more like just people. She was an attractive seeming lady, and I think people were like, guys will, that's the thing of a lot of that stuff, like not to go on a tangent as AJ tries to fix his audio, but
it's an important tangent. It's an important tangent.
I don't
Very
know if it's
relevant
or not.
It is actually. It is actually.
I think what you find is like, it's like even with guys, and you think about men being like really motivated by sex and thinking with their other head or whatever, and like there's validity to that sometimes. But I think what's funny is that men also want to be like understood, recognized, acknowledged, loved, and like, sort of just feel special, just like women do. And so what you really find is even with and like businesses like the webcam businesses and things like that, like where the guys end up buying these girls all these gifts, it's like they end up like developing these like relationships with like the women that they're following. Same thing with OnlyFans. And I think that's a huge secret when someone thinks about something like, and I've never been on OnlyFans. I know, of course, Ed's got the hot page that, you can follow Ed Reay at onlyfans.com or whatever. I don't really know what his,
dude. Okay. But if I actually had an OnlyFans, like I bet you like some people are like looking to see like, okay, I don't actually, but
2021.
2021. This is Ed's new goal resolution is a dope OnlyFans.
Dude,
pull that up, bro.
My freaking psychic told me I need to start a podcast, so that'll be it. That'll be the equivalent of it, I suppose.
Chad Fallman said only funnels.
Only funnels. Oh shit.
Yeah.
We should do an episode on OnlyFans just to talk about it and like break it apart and like marketing lessons.
I wouldn't mind getting an OnlyFans like a woman who's done really well on OnlyFans as a guest on Road to Billion. I think that'd be interesting. Right? Someone's got a connection. Maybe when the next time you're talking to one of your OnlyFans people, maybe you can.
Dude, they're so easy to find. Just go on TikTok, scroll for a few minutes, like a few cute girls, and you're gonna have all the.
As a married man, I have to be very careful how I approach like this. If I'm just like my search history, coming up like on TikTok, like
allow me to do the dirty work for you, Stefan.
Yeah,
allow me.
If you could do that for me, that would be great.
I got you.
Think it would be interesting to have one too. AJ, is your audio back? Do we think?
I think it's working good, right?
Yes,
sir.
Yeah, awesome.
Back.
That was fine. It works out. That technical difficulty led us on a wonderful, rabbit, which is great because my mom watches the show every week. So I'm sure my mom.
Yeah. Hi, Stefan's mom.
Yeah.
Not sure I can compete with that. Well, I was at the university, volunteered in the weight room, found out that none of the strength coaches make money. The top strength coach in the country, the most he made was like $200,000. And because of that seeding from, MTV Cribs, I was like, that's not enough money. And so I tried to figure out how do you make money. And Eric Cressy was a guy who was writing for T Nation. He's a college student like me, competed in powerlifting. He had DVDs out and seemed to be really, really doing well. So I just reached out to him, being a fellow powerlifter. I was known in the community, so I assumed he would respond, and he did. And he invited me to the Ryan Lee boot camp. And that was my first exposure to kind of, online marketing, direct response marketing. But I was so broke that, I slept on his couch, shared a room with him. It was just one of those things that, you're not really sure where you're going, but all the dots seem to connect when you look backwards,
Yeah, 100%. And so where did it go though? Where did things go from there?
Yeah. So from there, I, met a bunch of the speakers at the event and figured I would launch my own info product, and I would interview them. They all had the list. So I'd interview them, they would promote it, and we'd all make a lot of money. And, but I didn't know how to do copy. I didn't know how to build a website. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And so, I had a bunch of credit cards that had been given to get free t-shirts when I first got to college. And so it cost me about 25 grand to hire a copywriter, to build all the pages, to do all of that stuff. Launched the product, and I thought I was going to be rich, made a bunch of money, but after affiliate payouts and paying off the credit cards, I was left with basically nothing. But I had this list, but I had no idea at the time that that's where the real money was in the list. So I sent a weekly newsletter, it was just basically a strength and conditioning newsletter with tips, and I had an affiliate offer in there, and each week I'd sell one of the Precision Nutrition was the offer. And each week I would sell something, and I was like, I'm onto this with the affiliate stuff. And that's kind of when I started learning about a lot of black hat affiliate, things. And one of the things was these, way to siphon traffic off of brand search. And so you'd find a product, you'd go find a URL that essentially matched the product name, and you would build a site. And back then you could get sites ranked in 7 minutes with Squidoo and YouTube. And so you'd build this link wheel rank, and you would start to get traffic and make sales. And so I thought, this is a good idea. Why don't I pay someone to create a software for me that scrapes every single name out of ClickBank and then go search for the available domain name on GoDaddy and then does bulk purchases. And so I was doing that for a while. And, we had a software that then would, deploy a website on every one of these sites. And then we had software that would spin articles. And then we, had software that would build all the link wheels. And it was awesome. I was making a couple $100 a day, basically doing nothing. And, I thought I was going to be a billionaire. And then the old panda happened and I got slapped so hard that basically every single site disappeared. And I was going through my host monster, getting rid of domain names. It's, erectile dysfunction and like formula and like, all these different things that I had no idea I even had, but, I was making some money here and there off of it. And that's really when I was like, okay, what can I do now? And I figured I'd open a gym. I was doing well. I'd open a gym and I'd use, kind of what I knew to try to get people in. But I had no idea what I was doing. I tried to hire consultants. They ended up hiring me to come run their health club. And I thought, it's worth it. I learned for free, and then I can go back and do my own thing. And they also, because they had the consultant business, they kept talking about Dan Kennedy. They kept this guy, I was uploading their mastermind calls to the internet. We used Audio Acrobat back then. It was very hard to do. And I would listen to them, and they always mentioned Dan Kennedy, and they mentioned, his super conference. I was like, who's this Dan Kennedy guy? And, that's when I entered that world, and just became obsessed and signed up for his newsletter. And I was at the diamond level and, going to the events. But that led me to Frank Kern, learning about what he was doing. And I just started applying that stuff and giving them suggestions for the business, and they would try it. It would work. Funny how that happens. And sooner or later, they were like, hey, do you want to basically run the marketing for us? And at the time, they had the health clubs and they had the consultant business. And then one of the consultants' wife had an info product business. So that's what it was when we started. And then when we ended, we had about a dozen companies, high 6-figure, 7-figure businesses, business to business selling products, actual physical products to gym owners and consumers. And then we had, coaching programs and just so many different things. That was allowed me to be a full-time athlete and pay for the powerlifting. So to me, it was always a way to fund the sport. And so I continued to push on and, become a world record holder. And then once I had broke that world record, I thought there'd be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I still had this dream that like somehow I was going to monetize this and it was going to, make me a fortune. And, in reality, I broke the record. Nothing in my life changed. And, that's when I started deconstructing my whole life and trying to figure out, okay, what's going to make me happy and things like that. And, around that time, I figured, hey, I'm working for these other guys. They're making all this money and I'm only getting a small piece of the pie. Like, what if I flipped it? What if I was the one making all the money? And it was a terrible thought process at the time. But it allowed me to think differently. And, I said, oh, what do I know? And I said, I know how to, market and sell online. So I partnered up with other experts in the fitness space and started launching their brands online. And it was going really, really well. I would take a huge percentage of that. And, it was paying all my bills and allowing me to continue to lift. And then I was at a mastermind, met Yannick Silver, and out of curiosity, I asked him, hey, dude, I noticed you still have all physical products. And, Yannick had this online underground seminar. He was all about online marketing, but yet all of his products were still physical products. So I just said, is that for refunds? I figured there had to be a reason that he was holding on to those physical products. And he basically just said, hey, I have no idea how to get them online. And I don't have time to figure it out. So wanting to get access to his entire library of products, I said, well, I know how to do it. Why don't you let me do it for you? And then you have it. I'll do it for free. I just need all the products. And so I did that. And then Jeff Walker was launching Product Launch Formula again. And he used a couple of his products as bonuses. It went really, really well. He was super happy. And so we just began talking about what else I could potentially help him with. And turned out that he was he had this event, Underground Online Seminar, and it was coming up. He was way behind on everything, hadn't even built the website yet. And he was about to go away for a month with Richard Branson. And he was like, I really need this done. And I said, no problem. Just give me everything you got and I'll figure it out. And so I rewrote the copy, launched a sales page, built an entire, marketing plan for it. And, fast forward to the event, it was the biggest underground event that he had. And that really solidified that relationship and started to introduce me to everybody else. And so from then, basically, you know, I've been working with different, you know, marketers who most people know. And Andy had reached out to me. He wanted to go off and shoot movies. And he's like,
for people listening.
yeah, Andy Jenkins. And so he wanted to go off and shoot movies, and it coincided perfectly because I wanted to get out of Columbus, Ohio, where I was living at the time, walk away from powerlifting, and where else better to be than San Diego. So, you know, he went off to shoot movies. I came in, ran the company, but when he came back, it's kind of like, well, what do you do now? You know, like, and so I ended up writing copy, you know, email copy, sales page copy, but it's, you know, it wasn't full time, so to speak. And so I was like, okay, what else can I do? And that's when I, you know, went back into fitness and started working with gym owners and, you know, fitness entrepreneurs with their businesses. And then I was in a mastermind with Kevin Nations, and you know, started talking to these other guys in there, and none of them knew how to run traffic. And to me, the traffic piece was the easiest piece of the formula. You turn it on, you turn it off. It's just how much can you spend, how much do you make, what's the gap, figure out how to, you know, increase that gap so you make more money. But for them, it seemed to be this really difficult thing, and they were all really the very best at what they do in the world. They just weren't in front of enough people. And so I ended up showing a couple of them, you know, how to run traffic, with very simple formula. And I think we lost feed.
Yeah, I lost the video feed. I hear your voice.
Okay.
I'll take the voice.
I'll keep going. We'll get the camera back. But anyway, so I showed them, ended up running ads for them, big ticket formula ads. And, you know, that blew up. And so now I'm running a bunch of ads for people, and it was working going really well. And then Andy reached out to me again. He said, hey, I partnered up with Mike Filsaime. We have Marketing Genesis. We're going really well. Me and Mike don't really like to be at the office. We have this team. We don't really like to manage everything. We don't really want to be in charge of everything. We just want to do our thing, basically show up, shoot, and then leave, and everything take care of itself. You know, do you want to run the marketing team? And so I stepped in, started running that marketing team. And that went well for a good amount of time. But then kind of we had the launch, and they decided that, hey, let's shut the office down. We don't need an office. Everyone can work remote. And we can cut back a whole bunch of the staff. And I ended up taking on a lot more responsibilities. And I was like, I went from, you know, having this team to execute stuff to all of a sudden, like, it was my responsibility. And it just, like, for me, I wasn't working in my zone of genius, right, as more of that director. And so again, I went back to something I learned early on from Dan Kennedy, and it wasn't the doing of the thing, it was the knowing how to do the thing, right? And so I decided it's time for me to go off and consult and do those things. And so I did that. And then fast forward to about 3 years ago now, Andy called me up again, and he's like, hey dude, we just launched this product, Kartra, and you know, Frank's involved, and I want you involved. I want to blow this up. I want to turn it into $100 million company. So I was running a mastermind. Actually was living in Vegas at the time. We had this 11,000 square foot home that we were renting. We were running events out of it. I had a mastermind. My wife had a mastermind. And, you know, I couldn't turn up that opportunity to work with Andy, to work with Frank, to build something like, you know, to the $100 million level. And so I said, okay, I'm in, and been doing that since. And unfortunately, Andy was diagnosed with cancer shortly after I joined and had to take a huge step back. Frank had an opportunity to go to Miami and do some stuff with Grant Cardone. And so I was left to figure out, okay, how do I make this company that doesn't have a face anymore? We don't have a guru. We're not playing that game. We're a software company. We're not an info product company. What's the formula here? And, you know, business is business. And luckily, you know, I know direct response. And so that's what we've employed since. And, you know, we've gone from around 10 million in sales to 30 million in sales, and continue to grow. And it's all from applying direct response, you know, stuff to the business. And constantly, like I said at your mastermind that I spoke at a little while ago, you know, I plug the holes. I find a problem. I find a place that we're not doing follow-up. We're not doing this. And then, you know, we go from there. So that's been the journey. And I know I missed a bunch there. Just trying to keep relevant at the time, but You know, like I said, going forward, and none of it ever made sense. You know, how does a guy from England who is a basketball player end up running a $30 million software company? But it's really that, you know, I follow my passions. I become obsessed with the things that I'm into, and then I apply what I'm learning. And, you know, it seems so simple to me, but I guess for a lot of people, those are the hangups and the problems. You know, they get stuck and they get in their own way. So it's been a crazy journey, and I'm excited to move forward. And still want to build that $100 million company, like we said, and you know, start sharing some of this stuff. So I'm glad to be here and sharing the story.
Yeah, that's an awesome summary, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, like I said, it's such a wild journey from like a under 14 basketball star who was unfortunately only 5'6", you know, to where you are today and what you've done and growing the company you have today. When you found out, I mean, after you broke that road record and you were like number one in the world and you felt, you know, the fulfillment didn't come. Did you kind of become depressed? Did you struggle at that point, or did you sort of look at it from more of like a scientific perspective of like, oh, that's interesting and dissect it? Because I know you talked about you started tearing things apart, but like, I guess I'm just curious why you think you didn't feel the fulfillment that you'd expected to. You know, was it linked to money, or why was it? And then kind of, I'm curious about your mindset during that period of time.
Well, I didn't really know, but my ego was so out of control world. And yet, you know, like,
You're cutting out. The audio's cutting out again, AJ. Damn it.
oh, Jesus.
I know. It's okay.
I'm just going to, it's the, just, what do you think?
We can talk about OnlyFans again if you need to do any, you know.
Is it back or is it still?
It's back at this moment.
All right.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right, let's see how it goes. If not, if it breaks up again, I'll call in on my laptop. We'll do it old school.
Okay.
So, yeah, I didn't really, my ego was out of control though. So I was king of the world, but like, you know, everybody still treated me the same. And so it's more of this, like, okay, like this means nothing, right? Like it only meant something to you. It didn't mean something to everybody else. Like, and that was really when I started trying to figure out, like, why wasn't I happy? You know, like why had I been ignoring all of this stuff in my life? And that kind of led me down that self-development path to really figure out, like, you know, why was this even a good thing? You know, and that obsession, and really the sacrifices that I made that had affected so many other people, like what was driving me forward seemed to be destroying me at the same time. And it was fueled on anger. Like, you know, my lifting was fueled on anger. I was sexually abused as a teenager, and I kind of suppressed that. And then my way of dealing with it was, if I become the biggest badass in the world, nobody's ever going to be able to touch me or do anything to me again. And, you know, it was that. And I never dealt with that trauma. I never, you know, dealt with that. So I had this underlying anger. So really, it's difficult to build anything like on that foundation. Right. And so as I was tearing things apart, it was getting a little better, but powerlifting was really the thing that I was holding on to. And it wasn't until I realized that until I could let go of that, you know, and heal that anger, really nothing was going to change. And so that kind of was the beginning of that change. And, you know, it's when you're not chasing, when you become the very best in the world, it changes your perspective. Because when you're chasing, you don't know what's on the other side of that. But then when you achieve that, you know, hit that, all of a sudden you're like, well, nothing's different on the other side of that. It's exactly the same. It's actually just a more lonely place because nobody can really relate to it. Nobody's been there. You're on your own. Like there's nobody ahead of you, you know? So all of a sudden there isn't that thought process of, you know, well, if they've done it, I can do it too. You're just out there on your own. And you have to figure it out. And no one can really tell you like how to do that because they've never experienced that before themselves. And so it was one of those things where I never thought I was depressed. And then I went to a therapist, and at the end of his assessment was that I was a manic depressant. And I, out of a, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, where, you know, how depressed and unhappy would you say you are? I said 3. And he said, if you'd walked in my office and hadn't said anything, I would have scored you a 10 out of 10.
Wow.
And he said, you just have the ability somehow to ignore that. Like somehow you use that to drive you forward versus it's not destroying you. You're not, in bed. You're not, not getting out of, getting on with you. You're moving forward despite the
cut out again, Andy.
Depression.
Sorry, AJ. Yeah, cut out for a second, but we'll see. It was good before then. We'll give it a try. We'll see if it just sticks up. The mix sticks up. Because that's really, there's so many good things here. I want to advocate for people, who watch or listen to this, the power of like therapy in general, right? I've talked about where being re-diagnosed with ADHD was after I went to see a therapist and thought I had like seasonal depression, and then realized it was ADHD, and my guy Dr. Garcia just helped tremendously with that stuff. And it sounds like on your end, AJ, like it helped a lot with maybe realizing the depressiveness, but also the the patterns, right? Or even the anger. Because I guess with like the sexual abuse when you were a teenager, did you kind of suppress it? Did you realize, like, I guess that was fueling you until you broke the record, and then kind of did you kind of know in the back of your mind, or was it really something where then suddenly you were forced to like evaluate things in your life? And I guess how much did the therapy, because it totally makes sense. So you're like, okay, like I was sexually abused as a teenager. I used that anger, it fueled me. But, it also seems like something you get through help with somebody like taking a step back and looking from a broader perspective. So I guess I'm just curious, is that something that like a therapist really helped you to kind of put it all together? Or were you already kind of putting the pieces together before you saw a therapist?
Yeah. So I think it's one of those things, like most of us already know the answers. We already have all the things, but it's putting it together and then actually, doing those things. And it's funny because it's no different. And this is one of the things I think I'm unique, and a lot of people in the direct response world are unique, copywriters especially, because we understand humans at a much, greater, we understand people better than most people understand themselves. But it's one of those things where it's like, I knew all these things, and actually it was creating a bigger gap because I knew all these things, but somehow I wasn't doing them, and so then that guilt and shame and almost like self-punishment comes in because, how can I know this but not do that? And it was like, the more I peeled back that onion, the bigger that gap became, because now all of a sudden I'm saying, okay, well, I know better than this, but I still do this. I still act this way, especially with the anger. For me, that was the big thing. It's just reacting, my emotions, not having that emotional intelligence and control, and yet having all this knowledge. And so that's something that really helped. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for everyone watching, we'll get to questions in about 5 more minutes from now. I wanted to switching gears a little bit, AJ. What are mistakes that you see people making now, entrepreneurs, as they try to scale businesses? Because, you gave that awesome talk at the free mastermind I did in San Diego a few months back before, COVID shut everything down again. And I loved it. It was one of the most inspiring talks and made me think differently. And so it was awesome. But I'm just curious, when as someone who's helped a lot of different businesses to scale and grow, and who's now doing it, if your current business going from 10 to 30 million, and hopefully on the way to 100 million, what are the mistakes that you see people make, and what kind of traps should people avoid?
So there's a lot, but what I would say is that everybody thinks the grass is greener on the other side, right? So, and we actually see this in the Copy Accelerator Mastermind, right? Is that a freelancer sees a product, an offer owner, and says, oh, wow, they're making all this money, right? I want to jump over there. And then the offer owner sees the consultant and says, hey, wait a minute. Like, that seems, the reality is business is business, and it's really hard and complex. And so being able to simplify it is the process, right? And it is a lot of the case figuring out not what to add, but what to remove in business. But it's sticking with it. That's really the key. And there was an article that came up from SaaStr this morning, and it was saying about developers that jump from startup to startup and how they never really actually make any money, versus if they just stayed with one company. And so they think their resume looks good because they were at WhatsApp, they were at WhatsApp and they moved to Facebook, and now they're over here and they're doing this. But the reality is that they never really get any true equity in the company. They never actually really are able to build any, long-term value, and they're just going from thing to thing. So, for me, that's probably the biggest mistake I think an entrepreneur or, freelance or someone like that, is that like there is someone doing your exact business model and making all the money you could ever dream of making, right? And when something else comes along, that's really a distraction. And you have to think about it as basically going back to ground zero. So you're going through a system right now. You've gone to kindergarten, you went to middle school, you're in high school, you're going to college, you're going to end up with a doctorate degree. But then you say, you know what, I'm going to go back to kindergarten and start all over again. And I've made that mistake myself personally. And I think that is a true, when you look at companies or individuals that are very successful, they've usually been doing what they've been doing a long time, and the success all of a sudden appeared overnight. But you look back and it's like, nobody sees those 10, 20 years that they had put in to get to that point. So for me, I think that's the biggest thing I see is people just think the grass is greener on the other side and there must be an easier way because this is really hard. And life is hard. Relationships are hard. Health is hard. Faith and family is hard. So, the quicker people realize that it ain't probably going to get much easier, and that business is basically having a problem and finding a solution, it makes it easier because you don't get that emotional charge to it. One of the best analogies I saw is like when your gas tank gets, low, you don't like freak out. You just go to the gas station and fill it up. And, with everything else, we seem to freak out when there's no need to. And I think that's something that people can learn from and implement is, hey, it's supposed to be hard. Okay. And Ryan Holiday has that book, The Obstacle is the Way. You don't need to read the book. The title is literally the book. But, if you don't have obstacles, that may be a problem, right? If everything just seems too easy, that's at some point you're going to hit a brick wall. There's going to be the storm that comes. I don't know anybody, even my friends who are super spiritual, that, truly are able to turn everything over. They still have roadblocks. It's just the way they handle those roadblocks.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's just priceless advice and insight. I love the gas tank analogy as well. And I know, it's funny to when I had that stuff with that CoffeeZilla guy like a few months back, and that video that kind of like made me look really bad, which was, it was frustrating, but what was funny is I even told a couple of friends at the time, I was like, in a way, this is like, I haven't had like a really big challenge in like a while. And here I'm trying to grow a personal brand, and somebody with like a decent following and viewership does this video that kind of like makes me look bad. And of course, I think he had valid points about the direct response industry, but obviously the video was kind of cherry picked and whatever, but the point is, I actually, even there, like my mindset shifted really fast to being like, oh, this is kind of it's an interesting, like a challenge or something for me to tackle. And how do I respond to this? How do I handle it? And I was like, thinking back to like how supplement businesses I grew and scaled and other things, and how those challenges are kind of they're almost exciting, right? The whole thing with that's like the entire nature of business. I've said this before, is it's like it's a constant stream of challenges that become increasingly complex as you level up, and you're like basically a professional, puzzle solver and problem solver. And that's literally what business is. So if every time there's a problem, you freak out and call it a crisis and get paralyzed, you have to shift your mindset, or you shouldn't be in business, because literally that's if it was, again, super cliche, but if it was easy, everybody would do it. Right. And like the whole point is that the best business people, the most successful entrepreneurs and freelancers really are professional problem solvers who are really good at solving problems in unique and innovative ways. And that's
the thing, if you don't have problems, it's difficult to grow. That stress isn't a bad thing. Stress allows growth, and that's really what people need to understand, is that the more problems you have, the more opportunities you have to grow. The problem is if you try to focus on fixing everything right away and not understanding that it is a process. And, you look at someone who, let's say, wants to lose 100 pounds. And after I did the powerlifting, I lost 100 pounds, stepped on the bodybuilding stage. But you don't lose 100 pounds in 30 days, unless you're Steve Goggins, right? And like, he has an insane story. But the majority of people, if they could lose, half a pound a week, and they do that consistently over time, they hit their goals. But, society conditions us, and as marketers, we play to that when we're putting offers together. But people want that quick fix, but that quick fix is never a long-term solution. And you have to have that long-term mentality with business. And I think one thing, you know, for everyone listening, I think is if I was going to do what I'm doing right now for the next 60 years, because let's face it, none of us are really going to retire, right? That we don't believe in that. But like, if I was going to do this for the next 50 to 60 years, where could it be in that time? If I gave myself 50 years to get to the numbers I want to get to, what would that look like? And then you just say, okay, just got to take the next step and the next step and the next step. And that's really, I find too many people set that vision, but then they keep revisiting that vision. When I first started powerlifting, and I was lucky enough to train with another world record holder, he said, what do you want to do? At the time, my best squat was 550 pounds. He had the world record at 1,140 pounds. That's a big gap. And I told him I want to be a world record holder. And he told me what to do. And for the next 10 years, I did that. And I was able to, I ended up squatting 1,205 pounds and being a world record holder. But it was a 10-year journey. But I never changed that goal. I didn't suddenly say, oh, okay, now I want to go and do strongman, and now I'm going to go do body. I had one goal, one focus during that time. And with business, I think too many people, they set the target, and yes, things will change. The wind will blow, and you may end up in a completely different business. Look at Richard Branson with the Virgin brand, right? The Virgin brand is a set of principles, core values, and he has his vision for that. But the actual pieces of it continue to change. And I think that that's really what people need to understand is that if you know where you want to be and you commit fully to that, just be okay with the timeline being different, and don't compare yourself to someone else with a shorter timeline. In school, you have your A+ students who do nothing. They're just geniuses. And then you have your A+ students who work their asses off, hire tutors, put in all the extra work, but it's 10 times harder for them. I don't know where you are on that you know, scale, but let's be honest, there's people who do that who only get C's. But it's the willingness to do that and to do everything that it takes and accept that some people are going to have it easier. That's just life. But I'm not going to quit. I'm going to stick to it. And I think that entrepreneurs, it's a stick to itness. Like you said, when the shit hits the fan, you're just calm in the chaos.
Yeah. You know what's funny too, I can't remember where I read this, but it was in one of the books I was reading, but how like child prodigies, if you actually look at it and when they become adults, they actually have a very like low levels of like success and happiness. Generally, like, it doesn't equate. Even the kids who are like, you know, they're doing calculus when they're 5 and all this stuff. By the time they become adults, a lot of them live pretty dysfunctional lives and don't have much success monetarily. They're not happy. The relationships aren't great, all of these things. And so, you know, I don't know why that reminded me of it, because I think even for people who it comes easy, and if it doesn't come easy to you, that doesn't mean that is not your life path, right? It's like, but all it is really finding your unique thing and your thing that you're passionate about. And then to your point, just sticking with it. You know, we see it in copywriting all the time. Obviously, I see people who start writing copy, getting pretty good at it. It's like only been 6 months or a year. They're frustrated that they're not making, you know, like $30,000, $50,000 a month, and then they like quit and go decide to do whatever other thing they're going to do. And it's always breaks my heart because it takes time. One of the hardest things, and it's really hard, digital marketing and internet marketing and stuff like that, is because you can scale things really fast and things can happen really quickly, which I love about our industry. Like somebody can show up and create some random offer and suddenly they, you know, do 30 million or $50 million and they become a millionaire, and it happens in like a year. And that really can't happen in our industry. But because of that, we have that, it's so hard to take the longer horizon, like in the perspective of the longer horizon. And yet, if you can look at things that way and think about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and then really stay on course and just kind of correct course as you get off and make tweaks and adjustments, you know, it's incredible what you can actually accomplish. But to your point, most people just don't stick with it for long enough, and it's hard. Let's, I want to go to questions. Ed, obviously as our wonderful co-host here, I've been enjoying this conversation immensely, by the way. And I want to give you first crack if you have any questions or a question for AJ before we go to kind of the Q&A stuff. And
you've asked all the questions I had, so
awesome.
Perfect.
Well, I may speak in more, but yeah, let's go to the questions first.
Sounds good. So first up, we got Marcus Ortiz asking about tips on networking.
Cool. So what's up, Marcus?
Hey, Stefan. Hey, Ed. Hey, AJ.
Yo.
So my question is just asking AJ tips on networking and how you've been able to connect with so many heavy hitters. And especially if you feel like you're who's at the same level as them too, and you might have insecurity about that. Like, how do you approach them and talk to them?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing is everybody's just, is just a human, right? Everybody is going through the same thing. So not viewing them for that. Everyone is flawed. If you think that someone isn't flawed, that's that you've created a picture in your mind. And that's why they say you should never meet your heroes, because you meet your heroes and they disappoint you, right? Because you have a picture of who they are, and then all of a sudden they lose their temper or they get upset. So that's the first thing, just understand that, you know, they're no different than you were. And people above you are never going to suppress you. It's always the people below you that are trying to keep you down, right? So people above you are trying to pull you up. And so they're happy to chat most of the time. Now, of course, I don't know about a celebrity who's getting bugged all the time, but like in our world, there's really no celebrities. Everybody can walk down the street and not get mauled by a camera crew, right? So for me, I just went to the places these people were at and then just had genuine conversations. And in fact, I remember the first conversation I had with Frank Kern. We were in Baltimore at, I believe, a GKIC event, and we were at the bar. And I went up to him on my phone and said, have you seen this new superstore that's opening up in LA, this weed superstore? And he was like, no. And all of a sudden, Eric Roberts was the guy who was opening it with a friend of mine, Scott Mendelson. And all of a sudden we're watching this little thing about how they had this idea for this weed shop that essentially was like the size of Walmart. Never manifested, but I didn't go to him and start asking him questions about marketing. I went to him at the time. He was Frank the hippie. He was surfing, he was smoking weed, you know, and so I found something I thought he'd be interested in and had that genuine conversation. And because I wasn't looking to take in that first interaction, it opened up just a conversation. You know, now he's someone I can text when I have questions. So that's really the thing, is just understand people are human, and that most of the time, you know, if you can create a real genuine connection, that's what matters. And it's hard to do, right? One of my friends I met at an event, he was in a really bad place, and he, you know, I was introducing him to people and nobody wanted to talk to him because he was trying to take. He was like, hey, can you promote me? You know, like, how, you know, I think this would be great for your list. And it's like the used car salesman. When you go to a car lot, like, and that guy's trying to sell you that car and comes across like, I need this sale, you naturally reject from it. So just find the common ground and build a true relationship. Again, go back to thinking long-term. I tell people who are like, I need to get affiliates. It's like, okay, well, you need to start now and plan to get them to promote you a year from now, because you need to spend that time building that relationship, giving. If you haven't read the book, go give it. It's a great book. But I think that's the hardest thing to do when you need clients or when you need help. But it's what sets you apart, because most people are getting that all the time, and it's just a natural defense mechanism that goes up.
That's awesome. Does that help, Marcus? I'm gonna help.
Yes, it helps a lot. Thank you.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Glad to help. You know, free business idea for anyone watching. I have one idea. Is the dispensary thing reminded me of it. I want to create a chain called Stony Bear Bakeries, and then I want to put them next to like dispensaries and like, you know, cook like the cookies and like just delicious treats and just pipe like the smell of the cookies and everything out, you know, and then have people stand outside. So when people go to the dispensary, you give them like the business card and like we deliver. And then like basically just like strategically locate these like delicious like Stony bakeries, like, you know, next to dispensaries across the country, and with good delivery, with the smell of really dope stuff. And, you know, and then longer term, maybe you can partner with the dispensaries where you can actually even take over the weed delivery for them. So now you're like doing a service for them and you're saving them costs, but you're also delivering your, you know, cookies and treats and things like that. So if anybody wants to start Stony Bear Bakeries, yeah, I probably don't have time to launch that in 2021. So it's yours.
I wonder if Weed Maps allows you to advertise on their platform.
Yeah, if it does, that would be a really solid way to go about it for sure. Yeah. So just a tangent, but you know, I feel like I have so many business ideas that I'm like, I got to just do, oh, interesting. Oh, this is a Girl Scout cookie. So yeah, someone put a link in the chat. Marcus said about a Girl Scout who was selling cookies outside marijuana, like a dispensary. I think I've ever heard about that.
She got scolded by the Girl Scouts for that. The Girl Scouts scolded her. I was like, everyone thinks she's a genius.
Yeah, all the marketers are like, this girl's gonna crush it in life, and the Girl Scouts are like, yeah, awesome, cool. Ed, who we got next?
Next up, we got Santiago asking about powerlifting lessons.
Nice. So Santiago.
Hey, AJ and Stefan, how's it going?
Good.
Hey, great. So happy New Year.
Thanks, man.
Well, so the question I had, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but basically, did you take any lessons from powerlifting and applying them into marketing? And if so, which ones?
Great question. Yeah, it's funny because you don't notice what you take across until you start, really paying attention. But basics, I mentioned them, throughout, but become obsessed with the craft, right? For me, when I was powerlifting, I was super obsessed with it. And I studied everyone who was ahead of me. I watched the technique, I watched their thing. I wanted to talk to them at competitions. So I networked with them, looked at how they were training. I rejected a lot more than I accepted in terms of like when I was learning from them, but I wanted to see what they were doing, right? And I wanted to have the exposure to that. And then I had to show up every single day. Every single day I had to train. And it was, my main focus. So I was obsessed with it, became my main thing, and that was what I focused on. I didn't dilute, like my training style was powerlifting. I didn't do Olympic lifting. I didn't do bodybuilding. It was powerlifting. So don't dilute what you're doing, keep the main thing. Long-term focus, delayed gratification. That was huge. Like I said, it took over 10 years to break that record, but I had that goal and that's what I shot for. I didn't worry along the way if I missed. I would take those shots. So those are probably three of the biggest things: is the obsession, keeping the main thing, and then, delayed gratification and long-term goal setting.
That's awesome.
Amazing. So, well, thank you very much for that. I also have another question, quicker one.
Go for it.
So how does it feel to have 1,205 pounds in your bag?
What's your biggest squat?
Around 300.
Feels just like that. Hey, look, and anyone who makes money could tell you the same thing, right? Like making your, and Stefan and I were talking before, he's got a robot behind him. And what you said you were making nothing and it was like 150 bucks, right?
Yeah.
And that feeling is the same feeling you get when you hit your first 100,000, your first million, your first 10 million. It's the same. It's exactly the same. And in fact, sometimes that lower feeling, that first time you hit those lower numbers, are more exciting than when you hit the bigger ones. So it's an interesting question, but I always tell people the same as your max.
Well, thank you so much, AJ.
Awesome. Thanks, Santiago, for that question. That was a great question and great response. Love it. Ed, who we got next?
I think the most relevant question we have is from Santiago. Sorry, not Santiago. Marcus, about running webinars.
Okay, do that one. We can do the non-relevant ones too. But
Okay.
Go ahead, Marcus. You can do another one if you want.
Let's do it. Bring Marcus back on.
Bring him back. He's back.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Just because, AJ, since you run webinars, so I feel like a unique, perspective from running the platform. Like, what are some of the biggest things you see the top webinar marketers all being, best practices?
Yeah, Ed and I we talked about this a while back. There was a post, and then Ed and I went back and forth. But it's the follow-up. Most people don't understand that, when whatever you're building, right, it's the follow-up is where the money is. And so when you look at the webinar itself, getting people to register, getting people to show up is just half of the equation. You have this list that you now can continue to market to, but around the event itself. And so most of the successful webinar marketers right now are not relying just on email to get people to show up, right? So they're getting a text message, they're getting text messages involved, they're getting Messenger involved. Messenger is huge. And so their, show up rates are going up because they're creating more ways to communicate to get people to come back. For those that aren't doing automated webinars, they are doing live webinars. It's pre-selling people on the webinar. So remembering that, just like when you write a sales letter, every single line has to want someone to read that next line, right? Or VSL, every single minute has to get someone to the next minute. It's not, oh, this part can be boring. No, you lose them, right? So knowing that if you've got 4 days before a webinar, well, you have to promote for 4 days. What are you going to do to get them to show up to that webinar? Then when they're on the webinar, how do you get them to stick all the way through? And great content is the best thing to get them to stick, but can you create, ethical bribes to essentially get them to the end. Hey, don't worry about taking copious notes. I'm going to give you my slides. I'll post the link at the end. I have this bonus for you if you stick to the end. I see people give prizes out. You have to be careful that you're not just getting a ton of people there, because they want free shit. So you always have to be aware of that, but it's thinking along every single step of that funnel that you're building, whether it's a webinar or anything else. And really, how do we maximize conversions at each point? Most people think all they have to worry about is how much does it cost to get a registration and how many people to purchase. And that's good at the beginning, but as you go deeper, you have to figure out how do we get conversions at every single point along that. Even from the point if someone doesn't register, okay, well, we dropped a cookie and we can retarget. They were interested enough to visit the page. They just didn't want to give us their email. So, can we retarget them and show them a replay on Facebook? And that's really, you just got to think like that, is once someone has clicked an ad, right? They've raised their hand that there's some interest, don't let that person go so easily, and not to coin the thing you hear a million times, but they say, it takes 15 to 20 times someone sees something before they actually move forward. So, bearing that in mind, if you want to maximize your ad spend and ROI, you need to look at every step and what happens after the webinar, and one of the things we used to do, we did the webinar, we'd send a full replay out. Then we sent an edited replay out, right? Then we would take it and we'd turn it into a sales letter. So they didn't even, if they had not watched any of those, we still could make an offer by sending them to the sales letter. And so how far do you want to go down that path? And you can even look at how you sell your product. And again, you're going to make decisions based on the quality of people you want and whether you want barriers to entry. But if you have a payment plan, and okay, great, but do you have a trial? You offer a 6-pay payment plan. What if you just gave them a trial, $1, and they got access to the first module? And then it rebuilds them in 7 days unless they cancel. So you got to continue to think, where we may be losing people. And essentially, if you have a bucket, and leads are pouring in at the top, who's coming out of the sides and how do we plug those holes? So yeah, to me, a webinar is the same as anything else. It's just a great tool because you have an environment that people are fully focused on you for that hour or whatever. Just like if you were from stage, selling from stage is probably the best. But we can't do it right now. So webinars are the next best thing to the stage.
Thanks, that was super helpful. And since I'm on your email list too, if you did a follow-up video of tools or text follow-up for messenger follow-up, that'd be super cool.
Great.
Thanks, Marcus.
Marcus the man. All right, we have a great question here from Chad actually about how to avoid going back to kindergarten.
Nice. What's up, Chad?
Hey, what's up, studs? How you doing?
Good.
Chad the man.
Congrats on your new apartment or your new spot. I saw on Facebook you got a new place.
Yeah, thank you. I live in that hot tub now.
Look at you. Good to live in a hot tub. That's good.
Yeah, moving up. Hey, AJ. So let me give you a bit of backstory because I understand what you mean by continually going back to kindergarten. Direct response is something I love, and I've loved it for the past 10 years. But because I was so naturally good at it, and this is not to brag, this is just me speaking matter-of-factly, it's something I avoided. And even my non-entrepreneurial family said, you should do something with writing. So when I finally went all in with it, that's when I had success. And so now I want to start branching out into other things like e-com, for example. I'm sure you've heard Stefan talk about it. There's lots of things going on there. It's interesting. But how do I do that without going back to kindergarten?
Yeah. Stefan, I think you probably have some ideas here too. My biggest thing, and the reason I'm involved with the company I'm involved with, is because I realized I have a unique skill set, and that's what's valuable. And I can go into any business. And sometimes I wonder if this is like the air of confidence, and borders cockiness. But I literally, I go to a restaurant and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're leaving so much money on the table. And when I find a business that's like crushing it, and they're doing all those things, I get excited. I'm like, okay, they can have all my money because I'm so excited to be a part of this sales process. So if I was going into e-com, I'm actually working with an e-com brand right now. I'm not looking to do it all, right? I'm looking to come into a company that's already making money, and I want to optimize, tweak, and apply what I already know to make it better. And to me, like, it's easier to push someone downhill than it is to try to roll that ball back uphill. So to avoid going back to kindergarten, insert yourself into a company that is doing well, but isn't doing what you know how to do. The value you bring is so big that you can, basically negotiate percentage of increased income for them, profits. And it can be a big percentage because it's found money, it's found revenue. And your value to them is so high, and you haven't had to start completely from scratch. And then once you have, seed capital, you have extra money, you can go take that risk on your own if you want, or you can just find other businesses to partner up with. So Stefan may have a different opinion because I know he's been involved with a lot of different businesses. So.
No, I think that's really, really good. I agree. I mean, I think the thing, it's like the direct response elements still apply to e-com. I guess, yeah, like even the writing, because if you go to most e-com sites, like their headlines like suck. And you can, like I've used examples before where I changed the headline for someone with an e-com site and then increases overall conversions by like 10%. Like I did for like a dog harness company. They sell dog harnesses, and like changing the headline based on a little bit of research, increased conversion rate by like, it was like 11%. And this is like, they did like 1,000 sales a day. So it's an extra like 110 sales like per day they're doing now, right? It's like significant, like, oh, holy shit, right? And that was just a headline. And there's other stuff too, but then, I mean, the only other thing, I think early on, if you're just learning copy, like for sure, focus on copy. But once you get at a higher level, you're going to kind of become like a conversion optimization expert anyway, because you're going to look at the pages that your clients are putting up. You're going to be studying funnels. You're going to be seeing what's working. And because you're studying that, and most of these business owners aren't, it just gives you tremendous opportunities there as well. Like when I put a thing up on Facebook that was going to help some e-com companies and kind of share some stuff with, I think I use copywriting because everyone knows me for copywriting, but like most of the changes I gave them were like on-page conversion stuff. Like one guy had a bunch of testimonials, but the testimonials he had like static on his homepage were all from like 2018. And this seems like a really little thing. They were good testimonials, but I was like, hey man, if someone comes here and they only see testimonials from 2018, they might be like, well, why has nobody given you like a new testimonial? Like, oh, is this, maybe they're not still selling. Maybe, like they're like, if I'm going to give them money, but I want to get my product because this is an old page. And even though I saw an ad, like people don't know what's happening when they're like on websites most of the time. So something little like that, where it's like, and he had all these brand new, nice testimonials. I'm like, you need to be updating with fresh testimonials, super small thing. But basically what you want to reduce friction, right? Like you want to reduce friction and you want to reduce uncertainty and doubt and increase confidence. And that's what leads to conversions. We do that by writing copy, but it's the same thing with like on-page elements too. So one of the things I love about e-com is you can just spend an hour going over somebody's main landing page and you're going to see all of this stuff that they should be doing and that you will know from experience. So again, if they sell a 136, if it's like a supplement or a jar or something or whatever, and they have like the one bottles in the middle instead of the 6 bottle, right? If you've got 3 packages side by side, but they're highlighting the 1 bottle package, you're like, dude, just switch the order, show the 6 bottle one in the middle and make it a little bit bigger and bold and stuff like that. And you'll increase your average order value by like 20%, 30%. There's so many little wins you can get for them that don't take you that long. It's just based on experience. And from there, you make them a lot of money and you can make a lot. I honestly think e-com is probably one of the lowest hanging fruit, easiest ways to make money for a lot of the best direct response copywriters, because it's just the people who are running e-com businesses are kind of clueless. They like copy, but they read like, some like, I don't know what, they read like breakthrough advertising one time and like, yeah, I know about copywriting. And you're like, yeah, totally. But you don't know anything about on-page conversion optimization, stuff like that. So not to rant, but I just think it's really they're so cross applicable. I don't think that's shiny object syndrome, because you're applying what you know, like as a direct response copywriter and optimization expert, conversion expert, and you're just doing it both with copy and on-page stuff.
Yeah.
That makes sense, Chad?
Right on. Yeah, right on. I was going to create a product initially, but I think what I'm going to do is approach various e-com brands and have a proof of concept first, because why would I take that risk when someone else can, deal with the bullshit?
Yeah, do it with me, Chad. Because like I know, so I'll give context because Chad, he wrote like an upsell for me I really liked, and I think he's a really sharp guy. And then I just talked to Chad about putting him on retainer to help me with some different stuff. But like I have a bunch of ecom companies now that wanted like me to give them optimization ideas and copy ideas and stuff. I have like a whole spreadsheet. So get with me and like let's just go. I'll give you the access to the spreadsheet. We can pick a couple. You can go through and provide some like ideas. I'll share some. We'll get proof of concept, and then if you want like we can kind of partner on that a little bit because I want to do more of that too. And I don't have the bandwidth, but I know you're a sharp guy. So if you want to, or you go on your own, but if you want to do it with me, I would love to have you work with me on that.
Yeah, right on. Appreciate it, Stefan. And thank you, AJ.
Sweet. Awesome. Look, it's a radio show / job opportunities,
Exactly right.
Chad's a smart guy though, really is.
Changing lives over here.
Yeah, doing what I can.
All right, we have a question here from Jessica.
Wait, I want to rant for 5 seconds before we go to Jessica on the changing lives. Because somebody hit me up yesterday and they're like, and Copy started light, but they're like, hey, I just haven't had success getting clients, blah, blah. So I hate to do this. I got to cancel my membership. And I immediately was like, hey, well, I don't should say this publicly, but whatever. I was like, well, pause it. I'll pause it right now. I was like, hit me up on Monday, but seriously just see, because he was like, I'm going to go back to like, I guess I'm going to file for unemployment and go back to like get a job. I was just like, nope. I was like, because I know the guy and he's a smart guy, and like I've met him in person and stuff, and I was like, can't have that. So I'm gonna connect with the guy on Monday, and then I'll just like I'll put the guy on like payroll. I can't do this for everybody, so I don't want to like send the message out that like if you hit me up, I can like put everyone on payroll. But like again, I know this person, I know they're smart, and so it was just like the guy just saying he was gonna give up, like I just couldn't have that. So yeah, I'm trying to change lives because I can't have that guy going back to a job. It's like,
Steph, can you put me on payroll?
I mean, I've paid you a good amount of money last year. We basically just trade money. You know what I mean? Like that's at a level of entrepreneurship at a high level. Someone's Alex Hermosi too. And like that's how it's really just a bunch of friends like exchanging money back and forth. Like you're really just sending each other like quantities of money for stuff like all day long. That's like half of what we're doing here. I love it.
It's funny. So question here from Jessica about how prioritization.
What's up, Jessica?
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. How are you?
I always get a laugh at everything you guys say. Yeah. So first of all, thank you, AJ, for being here. It's so exciting and wonderful to hear about you and your experience. And Ed, always a pleasure. And of course, Stefan, always a pleasure. So thank you. Yeah, prioritization. So I'm one of these people too, where I get a little overwhelmed and I'm slow. So I've been trying to do copywriting for a while. And in terms of tasks, like let's say you wanted to write a Facebook ad and you wanted to actually be an affiliate with it and maybe sell a product as an experience. But what I realized is like you not only should, know the copywriting, but then also like have a Facebook account. And then I understand you have to like season the page before you can even run ads maybe. And then you got to learn how to do the ad, like make the ad. And then, are you going to have any sort of tracking for testing? I mean, like, I hope you can see what I'm trying to get at is that there's like so many things. So how do you prioritize like, this is a good requirement. This is maybe like a due later. And then sometimes like, you don't even know, like you also need that time to like learn something too that gets built into it. So how's the best way to handle that is my question.
That's a good question. AJ, do you got ideas, or if you need a minute to think about it, I can always jump in, but.
Well, I mean, in my younger days, I just throw shit against the wall and see what's stuck, right? But as I've gotten older and had smarter people talk to me, I think you have to look at what your priorities are, right? Do you have the ability to wait, to figure all those things out, or do you need money today? And if you need money today, like writing that ad for somebody else, is huge. And obviously there's the job boards, but Upwork, and there's so many places to just get work, right? For cash flow, right? Because I don't know if you watched the Undercover Billionaire show, and the guy has $100, and in 90 days he creates a business worth $750,000. His goal was to make it $1 million in 90 days, and he was the former billionaire. But in order to do that, he knew he needed to make money. So he was driving around looking for tires to be able to get cash so he could, what he said, and I think this is very important, is if you're in survival mode, you can never think in abundance. So you have to figure out. So he knew he needed I can't remember the exact amount, a couple $1,000s for rent and food for the 90 days. So then he could focus on actually the business stuff. So that was the first goal. So you have to kind of chunk your goals. And I thought that was just with the show, it was an interesting show. Some stuff I didn't necessarily thought was that great, but that was something that early on I was like, for so many people, that's so important. If you're in survival, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my rent? It's really difficult to think long-term. So get that taken care of first. And maybe that is taking, getting on salary with someone and just having that security while you do the side hustle. But to me, that's really how you prioritize. And, if the goal is to just get a client, like that's the whole focus until you get that client, then you can work on that next thing. It might not be the answer most want to hear, but that's normally, he built I don't know why he chose a restaurant as his business. I thought that was an interesting thing, but he chose to open a restaurant, and it goes how he got there. I just found it still an interesting thing. But to get there, he sold tires that he found, then he flipped 2 cars, then he flipped the house, and to be able to open a restaurant. He did all of that in 90 days. So none of the stuff he did before the restaurant was related to the restaurant. It was just to get the cash flow for the restaurant. So there's some great lessons in it, but that would be my advice.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thanks for asking that question, Jessica.
Thank you, guys.
Like
Have a great holiday.
Cover billionaire, Stefan.
I feel like I want to. I feel like
Grant Cadone's on it this next season, season 2. And I was like, how did he's not a billionaire. How did that happen?
He is calling himself a billionaire now. So
no, yeah. All right.
Well. Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that. I'm like, what would I do for $100? I mean, I'm thinking pretty heavily about doing a reality show in 2021. I'm probably going to do that. There's just so many things I want to do, but I won't necessarily do, but it'll be fun to take $100. I'm thinking about what I would do. I mean, the funny thing is, I'm like, do I have like a computer and internet connection? Right.
Yeah.
Because if I do,
then you could just like get a job, like
Ash, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's going Upwork or whatever. And, Fiverr. I mean, dude, Ariba Ahmed, who, Justin just interviewed, and she's in Copy Accelerator, but she was, before even she joined Copy Accelerator, she was doing Fiverr gigs, but she was turning them into like $1,000, like single one-off projects with clients from Fiverr. So she was doing these like $1,000 gigs on Fiverr, just by like upselling and doing all this really smart stuff. So, it's like I don't know, man. You don't want to oversimplify it. I understand it's hard, but like, it also isn't. It's like there are opportunities there. A lot of the times it's just like classic sales, like everything, right? You have to hear 100 no's until you hear the first yes, but all it takes is the one yes. But it's like, true. I can't have people who are like, oh, I emailed 20 people and didn't hear back, so I think I'm going to give up. 20 people. Imagine if you're like on a sales floor and you call 20 people and didn't get a yes, and you're like, well, I guess, this whole thing doesn't work, right? And as you sit in this giant building that was like owned by the company that was built by sales, and it's really about perseverance sometimes too. So I don't know, not to rant. Ed, what we got? Who's next?
So
2 more here.
We do have 2 more. The other person, so Sethish asked a question, but they left. So I'll just read out the question. Where do you do research if you couldn't get enough info in forums and Amazon reviews? Let's say you want to research about entrepreneur struggles.
I feel like you should be able to get a lot of information on entrepreneur struggles on forums and stuff like that.
Unless it's like high-end digital marketing or something like really niche like that.
Yeah. But I mean, I would go to like Facebook groups. I would look at like Facebook groups, maybe LinkedIn groups, stuff like that, go on social media. And there's blogs. I mean, there's so many entrepreneurial blogs that you could go to where people are like talking about their struggles and journeys. And then, not just looking at that, but if the ones that have comments and people who would be commenting like, oh, I feel the same way, I've experienced this, but yeah, I'd go to Facebook groups for entrepreneurs and things of that nature and see people sharing what they're struggling. Yeah, Santiago, I've used that before too. Santiago shared the Fastlane forum, which is good for the entrepreneurial niche too. Good share, Santiago.
Usually going to like masterminds and like paid groups you'll get a lot more qualified information.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
I was just say the bar at events.
Yeah, the bar.
Yeah. Clearly that's where all the cool people hang out, eh?
It is though. And I mean, but I think that advice because we have one question left anyway, I think. So we got 15 minutes, so I'll rant for a second, which is that, not rant, just talk. But yeah, man, like it's so transparent. When you go to an event and somebody comes up and they're like trying to pitch you right away, it's such a big turnoff. But when you just start talking to people and you like them, you know, it's like, you're way more likely to do business with them after that. Yeah, Ben Marcoux, who was on this call, I don't know if he still is or not, he did a thing in my Freelancer Freedom course about, he calls it like exponential marketing. And essentially his whole thing was when you go to an event, basically making friends with one person and another person, you get like a little crew. And then like, that's your crew at the event and you guys stick together and you hang out. And then like over time, that crew starts going out and like, they're all meeting people. And then like, they're like introducing like, oh, you should talk to Ben because he does this. And now your friends and your crew are like introducing, you know, other people to you. And you're introducing people to your crew. You're basically just all kind of helping each other by like going out and making intros. Because when you have like an intro that comes in, right? Like if I go to myself and like, hey, I'm Stefan, I'm like a copywriter. I mean, like today maybe that would work, but early on it wouldn't. But if like, you know, 3 people, if like AJ and Ed and, you know, whoever else go up and they're like, oh yeah, talk to a copywriter, Stefan, you should talk to him. And they go, even though like they don't know a ton about me, just by the fact that they're introducing me now, like that increases the chance of that person looking at me as like an expert or an authority compared to me going and doing it. So how that happens is if you have like relationships and friendships, it's not about the person you meet and like that's not transactional, or it shouldn't be, it's relational. But once you have those relationships there, then again, it's like people, they're out doing other stuff and somebody brings up like, oh, I need a copywriter, I need an e-com expert, I need like a optimization, whatever it is, you know, people you've been talking to think about you and they bring those people to you. So I think that's really good. And yeah, Chad Fallman said, pro tip, get in the habit of introducing people. That I totally agree. The more you start introducing people and connecting people, like it just, it's better for you. People value it, they remember it, but then also people want to reciprocate. So then they start trying to introduce people to you as well. And again, you can do that stuff in like Facebook groups as well. You don't have to do it offline. You can do that stuff in Facebook groups, like Santiago said, things like that as well.
And I would say like, because we know most of us are like truly like, everyone thinks we're extrovert, but we're not, we're introvert. We like to go in our cave, research, like I didn't even consider myself a researcher. And I'm like, yeah, I love to read and gain knowledge and then present it, but I don't want to like be with people every day and stuff. So like, I think one of the things, like when you go to events is like, say, hey, I need a roommate, right? Or like, does anybody want to get an Airbnb? Because most people, like there's a group of people who, you know, like want to save money and and don't know anybody themselves. So you can instantly have a crew. You don't even have to go introduce yourself to anyone, just from before the event saying, does anyone need a roommate or something? I've seen that. Like, I think back to the events that like were the best for me. It was like when I had roommates and stuff, because they usually know other people already. And so if you know nobody, all of a sudden you're actually adopted into that group right away and you can't help but build a friendship. So, you know, force yourself into that uncomfortable situation of sharing a room, you know, or a house. Luckily with Airbnb, you don't necessarily have to be in that room, but yeah, I think it's like putting yourself in that situation, because I know even now, like if I have to go introduce myself, it's not my favorite thing to do, you know?
Yeah, I hate introducing myself. I'm so awkward, but you're right. That's awesome. That's a really good call. I can think of 2 different times I did that both worked really well. One was like Connective did a event in Key West in like 2015, and I stayed at a house, and out of that, like 2 years later, one of the people from that house hired me for like 50 grand for something. And then Matt, who I was in the house with Matt, who was owner of Connective, and they're a sponsor of Copy Accelerator, and you know, built relationships with people at that event that then had a long tail ROI. But at the time I wasn't doing it, you know, it wasn't transactional. It was just like there because that was like what the options were. And then with Ed O'Keefe, I was in his mastermind for a couple of years, and really that was the first mastermind I was in. I got a ton of value from it. And we went to traffic and conversion one year, and he had I think before it or something, and a bunch of us like shared an Airbnb in downtown San Diego in like the Little Italy, and a bunch of those people I'm still friends with, like really good friends with to this day, and we've done business together and stuff like that. But yeah, that's great advice, AJ. Awesome. Cool. I think we have two more, Ed. Let's get Kimmy Doos, and we'll get both, but you know, I got Kimmy Doo.
Kimmy Doo's got a question here about developing mental toughness.
What's up, Kimmy Doo?
Hi, Stefan. Hi, AJ. Hi, Ed.
What's up, Kimmy?
What's up? Yeah, so the question I had is how to develop mental toughness, like in business and in sports.
Awesome.
So most people, they don't understand that the mind is like the rest of the body, right? Like, so if you want to if you want bigger biceps, for example, you train your biceps. And most people don't ever think about with that mind. So I was lucky enough in college, because I was good at what I did, the sports psychology department wanted to study me. And what we found was that like most of their mental training tools were things I did naturally. So self-talk, visualization, goal setting, these were all things that I was doing. So really to be mentally tough, it's that what's your self-dialogue? What are you constantly telling yourself? So what I do now, I do a lot more meditation, a lot more visualization, and those kind of things. But it's that training of the mind. If you want to get mentally strong, you have to train the mind to be mentally strong. And there's lots of ways to do that. So just stop, looking into that. You'll come up with a bunch of stuff. But for me, meditation daily has been the biggest thing to allow me to control like my mental state and to remind myself, be present and not get caught up. Dan Sullivan talks a lot about the gap where you're, as an entrepreneur, you're in two places. You're either looking behind like where you used to be and where you are now, right? Because there's been a fall from grace. And so you're comparing yourself to old self and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm nothing like that person anymore. And what's wrong with me? Or you're looking forward about where you should be and why am I not there yet? And you're in this constant like back and forth of comparison with either who you were or who you think you should be. And so you got to come back to present. So mental toughness is you just have to start training the brain like you would anything else. And most people don't give any focus to their own thoughts and things like that. So you go more down the Zen path, but it definitely becomes a very powerful tool, even from a breathing standpoint, like being able to control your breath and which can completely control your physical state. So yeah.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you so much.
All right. And last but not least, we have Santiago with a powerlifting question.
Nice. Santiago, back to the powerlifting. What's up?
Hey again, guys. So as I promised, I said screw it and decided to take advantage of this opportunity to ask another powerlifting question because we don't have our record holder every day. So, well, the question I have is, any tips you have to stay injury-free?
Yeah. So in life, there's these warning signs, right? And when you're training, you always have that like nagging shoulder pain or like, your hip hurts, but most of us ignore that and like think you have to train through it. And the key is really to take that as early as you can as a warning sign and to figure out, okay, like, for example, a lot of powerlifters are really, really stiff in the shoulders. They get like frozen shoulder. And so getting under a squat bar is like you like pinning yourself under the bar. So a lot of times you just use that safety squat bar, right? Instead of saying, okay, why are my shoulders so tight and what do I need to do to release them? Okay. And it might need some soft tissue work. I might need that. That is actually, the question was asked earlier about one of the lessons I took over. In business, it's the same thing. There's a lot of times there's warning signs, right? There's a lot of things you're like, like this is making me money, but I'm not really sure if this is like a good thing. Or you have an employee that a team member that you think to yourself like, I probably should let him go, but then you hold on too long. So like, you got to look for those warning signs, and the earlier you can like notice them and like, trust your gut, right? And get back to that, like your gut instinct is normally correct. And what we do as humans is go, oh, that can't be true. Like, oh, I'm being like, that's like in my mind, and we ignore that. So the more you can kind of like become intuitive, and that gets a little woo-woo-y, but the more you can become intuitive and actually like trust your gut, and actually pay attention, which comes to knowing yourself, right? Really getting in tune with who you are.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Cool. Well, this was one of the most efficient episodes of the Road to Billion we've ever had, because we actually got through all of the questions and basically right on time. So AJ, for people who want to interact with you more, what's the best way for them to do that?
Get on my email list at ajroberts.com. I don't have a fancy application like you. But I also don't, I like to say almost everyday email, because I only mail when I feel like I have something truly of value to share, or just follow me on Facebook at ajroberts.com.
Awesome. Cool.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ed
We'll put
Reay.
the link to your email list in the show notes for YouTube and iTunes and all that too. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing. I love this episode. I thought there's so much value here, and really glad we were able to do this. Looking forward to hanging out again in person sometime soon once San Diego comes out of the dark ages or whatever, eventually. And Ed Reay, thank you too for being our wonderful co-host. Appreciate that as always.
You got it.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks, AJ.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.